Tom Zenk looked like a star from day one. Square jaw, big smile, shredded body. He was a promoter's dream, but the business quickly turned into his personal nightmare. Instead of rising to the top, Zenk became known as the good-looking guy who walked out, burned bridges, and then went on shoot interviews to complain about everyone else. Fans remember him as the Z-Man in WCW, a decent worker with a flashy dropkick. Wrestlers, though, they remember him as the guy who'd smile at you in the locker room, then bury you in an interview 6 months later. If Zenk had been paid in bitterness, he'd have been the richest man in wrestling. He walked out on WWF, soured on WCW, and left promoters pulling their hair out. Zenk didn't just hate the politics of the business, he hated specific people. And unlike most wrestlers who buried grudges for the sake of a payday, he made sure his were heard loud and clear. Today, we're cutting through the Z-Man's glossy exterior and digging into the people Zenk absolutely couldn't stand. Trust me, he swung harder in interviews than he ever did in the ring. When Tom Zenk hit WWF in 1987, he thought he'd made it. The Can-Am connection with Rick Martel looked like a money machine, but Zenk found out quickly that Vince McMahon didn't see money when he looked at him. He saw expendable. The core of Zenk's hatred for WWF came down to the contract. He discovered Martel was secretly earning more despite promises of equality. When Zenk walked out, Vince didn't just let him go, he branded him a quitter and made sure promoters heard it. In wrestling, being called a quitter is like having "do not hire" tattooed on your forehead. Zenk hated Vince for letting that image stick. He claimed he wasn't even given the chance to speak directly to McMahon about the money dispute. Instead, Vince sided with Martel, sued Zenk for breach of contract, and blackballed him in the process. From that point on, Zenk wasn't just anti-WWF, he was openly hostile. He blasted Vince in interviews, accusing him of running a company where loyalty only flowed one way. Zenk never forgave him for turning a pay dispute into a career-killing stigma. Zenk once said, "They slapped that quitter label on me. That's all promoters needed to bury you." For Vince, it was just business. For Zenk, it was betrayal that burned for decades. And let's be honest, if McMahon really thought Zenk mattered, he would have at least put him in court instead of just putting him in the dirt. Vince didn't just win, he barely noticed he'd been in a fight. If Zenk hated Vince McMahon, then WCW management made his blood boil. Under Jim Herd and later Eric Bischoff, the company was chaos dressed in Turner money, and Zenk was never shy about letting everyone know how much he despised the clowns running the circus. With Herd, Zenk thought he was dealing with a guy who didn't even understand wrestling. Herd was an ex-pizza executive notorious for out-of-touch gimmick ideas. For Zenk, it was proof that the lunatics had taken over the asylum. He couldn't stomach the idea of his career being dictated by someone whose experience in the ring was zero and whose decisions were dictated by office politics rather than wrestling sense. Then came Bischoff. On the surface, slick and corporate. But Zenk saw him as another suit who cared more about Hogan's tan than the mid-card's paychecks. In interviews, Zenk tore into WCW for rewarding office stooges, while workers like him got crumbs. His hatred wasn't subtle. He called WCW a political swamp where talent didn't matter, only who you sucked up to. Herd-era gimmicks like the Hunchbacks only reinforced his point that the office ran the show, not the wrestlers. They didn't care about the wrestlers, just their own egos and keeping their power. That wasn't bitterness talking, that was his mission statement. He despised the hypocrisy. WCW advertised itself as the alternative, but behind the curtain, it was the same corrupt game he'd left in the WWF. If anything, it was worse, because WCW didn't even try to hide it. In the end, Zenk hated the office more than any heel across the ring. At least wrestlers hit you in the chest, not the paycheck. Tom Zenk didn't hold back when it came to in-ring talent he couldn't respect, and Steve Strong, also known as Steve DiSalvo, was at the top of that list. Zenk's problem wasn't personal drama or politics. It was simple. Strong was stiff, clumsy, and dangerous in the ring. In Zenk's eyes, that made him a liability. Zenk described working with Strong as like wrestling a moving brick wall. One misstep from Strong, and Zenk could be looking at a busted nose or a pulled tendon. And he didn't mince words. In shoot interviews, he called Strong a caveman klutz who shouldn't have been allowed in a ring with anyone who had a pulse. He felt Strong's style risked careers, not just his own ego. The hatred went beyond professional frustration. Zenk despised that promoters kept putting him with Strong, pretending it was a fair matchup. In Zenk's eyes, it was negligence. You can forgive a bad match, but risking injury because management wanted a spectacle? That's unforgivable. Zenk also made it clear that he didn't respect wrestlers who relied solely on size or looks without skill. Strong was tall, strong, and impressive looking. But Zenk said all that mattered was control, precision, and safety. And Strong had none of them. He laughed about it later in interviews, but the humor was savage. Working with him was like letting a gorilla drive a sports car. You pray it doesn't crash, then it does. Zenk's contempt for Strong was rooted in talent, not ego, which somehow made it even more brutal in his shoot-style breakdowns. If anyone deserves the full fire, it's Rick Martel. Tom Zenk's former tag partner wasn't just a teammate. He was the architect of Zenk's professional misery. In Zenk's own words, Martel lied about pay, manipulated contracts, and smeared his name behind the scenes. This wasn't locker room friction. It was career sabotage. The Can-Am connection looked shiny on paper, but behind the scenes, it was a nightmare. Zenk discovered Martel was secretly earning more money while presenting them as equals. When Zenk quit WWF, Martel spread the quitter label faster than a low blow at a Survivor Series match. Zenk's reputation was torched overnight. Zenk didn't hold back. Rick Martel betrayed me. I couldn't trust him, not in money, not in business. He blamed Martel for the legal mess, the blackballing, and the endless whispers in every promotion he went to afterward. Every handshake was a landmine, every conversation a reminder of Martel's duplicity. Martel's greed and ego were the stuff of legend. Zenk recounted being blindsided by promoters siding with Martel, watching as his career momentum was crushed while Martel sailed smoothly to singles pushes. For Zenk, this wasn't a business lesson. It was a personal betrayal the size of WrestleMania itself. In interviews, Zenk let the venom fly. He roasted Martel with surgical precision. He made our partnership look equal, then pocketed everything and told the suits I was the problem. If there's a wrestling hell, he's already booked the front row seat. That's not bitterness. That's historical record. Martel burned Zenk's trust, his finances, and his opportunities. For Zenk, it wasn't just a breakup, it was a crucifixion. And unlike most wrestling stories, this one leaves ashes you can actually smell. Tom Zenk's career was a trail of burned bridges, betrayed friendships, and bitter shoot interviews that left no ego unscathed. From the WWF suits to the WCW politics, clumsy partners, overprotected stars, and the ultimate Can-Am betrayal, he had a front row seat to wrestling's uglier side. Zenk didn't just complain, he documented, roasted, and exposed every misstep with brutal honesty. If wrestling were a crime scene, Zenk would be the coroner laughing at the mess. Well, that's all for today. I hope you enjoyed the video. Hit like, slam subscribe, and join the carnage. Don't be a Martel. Stick around, watch the chaos, and witness wrestling's brutal backstage truths with Zenk as your tour guide. It's been great having you today. Thanks for watching.